Let us listen to this northerner who have made it very clear that Nigeria was never created to work in the first place, blaming Britain for amalgamating people of different culture, different background together without consideration of how the unity will work. Though I totally agree with him, because I will allow you to listen to it shortly. But even by providence, God himself never created Nigeria as one, because there's a natural unifying factor, talking about language. So God in his wisdom gave the Igbos their own distinct language, gave Hausa their own distinct language, gave Yoruba their own distinct language, and even other minor ethnic nationalities in Nigeria, God in his wisdom gave them their different languages. So to that extent, the country, or rather Nigeria, was never created as one by providence. But before we listen to the man, let us even look at what the founding fathers of Nigeria said in the past about Nigeria. This one is coming from Awolowo in 1947. He's saying, Nigeria is not a nation. It is a mere geographical expression. There are no Nigerians in the same sense as there are English ways or French. The word Nigeria is a mere distinctive appellation to distinguish those who live within the boundaries of Nigeria and those who do not. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, 1947. We equally look at another one, because from three regions, we are talking about Awolowo, Azikiwe, and Tafawa Balewa. This one is, of course, coming from Tafawa Balewa. He says in 1914, he says, the British government has been trying to make Nigeria into one country, but the Nigerian people themselves are historically different in their backgrounds, in their religious beliefs and customs, and do not show themselves any signs of willingness to unite. Nigeria unity is only a British invention. Alhaji Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, 1948. So you begin to wonder. Let us take the last one before we go further into this conversation. This one is coming from Nnamdi, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. He's saying, it is better for us and many admirers abroad that we should disintegrate in peace and not in pieces. Should the politicians fail to heed the warning, then I will venture the prediction that the experience of the Democratic Republic of Congo will be a child's play if it ever comes to our turn to play such a tragic role. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, 1964. That is when he made that statement. Then going further into this conversation, good thing is already coming from the north that Nigeria is not one. Nigeria was never created to be one. I will allow you to listen to the man shortly. But before you listen to the man again, let me equally tell you that Nigerian government is already a signatory to a UN charter that talks about self-determination. They are equally a signatory to an African charter that talks about self-determination. For instance, let us look at Article 1, Subsection 2 of UN Charter. It states that one of the main purposes of United Nations, and thus the Security Council, is to develop friendly international relations based on respect for principle of equal rights and self-determination of the people. So you can clearly see that the UN Charter talks about self-determination, and the interesting part is that Nigerian government is already a signatory of this UN Charter. So let me quickly go to the African Charter that guarantees that, so that you see where Nnamdi Kanu is coming from. This one says, Article 20 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. It states that all people have right to existence and an unquestionable and inalienable right to self-determination. I want to say that Nigerian government is equally a signatory to this African Charter. So to that extent, it is a right of the people to talk about self-determination, most especially as Nigeria is not currently working. But meanwhile, let me allow you to listen to the man in question so that we'll come back to further this conversation.
From the very beginning, when we were amalgamated, to the very beginning we became a nation, we got it altogether wrong. You bring in people of different culture, different beliefs, different socialization, different milieu, different outlooks, merge them together by force to form a nation. Only the initial builders of Nigeria had a clear vision and a mission, devoid of any sentiment. Soon thereafter, it became clear that it was a wrong union. It was a union that was not properly negotiated. We could have remained a great country if we had isolated our own identities, peculiarities, culture, while contributing to build a nation just like America. But we ended up having people from one generation, one set of leaders to another, everybody coming with a vision and a mission, and destroy the previous ones he made, even if they are good, because they are put in place by an imaginary enemy.
So having listened to him, I think it's now abundantly clear that Nigeria in the first place was never created to be one by providence, and secondly, that Nigeria is not working. And when you have a situation like this, what is the way out? And currently, we can clearly see the excesses of Fulani militias. You can clearly see the highest level of insecurity ever witnessed in this part of the world. And for me, the best approach to this is one, a total restructuring. If that is not working, then let people go their separate ways. Because currently, it is evident that the current security arrangement is not able to police the people. The Director General of DSS alluded to the fact recently that the communities should be empowered to be the first line of defense in case of invasion. Because what we hitherto hear happen in the northern part of the country is already here with us in the southern part of the country. Talking about kidnapping, maiming, occasioned by Fulani militias. And if you look at Fulani militias, Global Terrorism Desk put them as the fourth most dangerous terrorist organization in the world. So the government must give it the priority attention it deserves. Because for me, it's better we look at whether there's need to continue being together. This is not far-fetched. Because if you look at the Aburi Accord before the Nigerian Civil War, all the solution we are seeking today was already resolved by the Aburi Accord. If Gowon had allowed Aburi Accord to stay true, if he didn't come back and deny all the terms of the agreement reached at Aburi, today, I don't think anybody will be talking about state police or insecurity occasioned by SS of Fulani militias. Because in the Aburi Accord, it was already contained that there was going to be a decentralized police. Even the military was going to be broken into regions. That is why, if division is not imminent, I think what is paramount now is a total restructuring that will return Nigeria to true federalism. Because that was the basis of the Aburi Accord, and that was the agreement that came from Aburi Accord. So it was surprising that the government then reneged. And today, we are still discussing problems that would have been solved so many years ago. Because currently, even in the northern part of the country, there are some places where people do not sleep with their eyes closed. If you look at the havoc wreaked by the likes of Toji Bello and Ada Aleru, you begin to wonder, are we truly a sovereign state? That is why I make a strong advocacy that the likes of Toji Bello must not be negotiated with. The government must not negotiate with the likes of Toji Bello. He must be neutralized in the battlefield, or he must be arrested and bring to justice to act as a deterrent to others. Because the way it is, so many Nigerians, so many military personnel have died in his hands in the course of his nefarious activities. The same thing is applicable to Ada Aleru, who of course the other time held meeting with the Zamfara state governor and the Katsina state governor. I understand that even recently the Zamfara state governor made it very clear that he acknowledged that these are people who hail from his state, who of course they can trace their origin. But the question is, he expressed predicaments, his inability to address the security challenges, particularly because of the command and control of the Nigerian security architecture that is not within his control. You begin to wonder, law is made by man, and when the law is not working, is it not proper that it should be rejected? Because how can the governor be going by the name of the governor and the chief security officer of the state and he do not command a fly? Of course, this was an exact statement made by Jorajang as a former governor of Plateau State. We have already seen the former governor of Rivers State talking about Nyesom Wike, who as a governor said he is the chief logistic officer, not the chief, not the, yes, that he's the chief logistic officer of the state. That is when they try to address him as the chief security officer of the state. He was saying it because he could merely see that he do not command the security architecture within his state. So the point here is it not better we reject the security architecture for efficiency so that we can address the myriad of challenges we are facing, or rather that is confronting the country? And if this is not achievable, perhaps because those who seek to subjugate everyone seems to be powerful, is it not better we allow everybody go in separate ways? Because the way it is, now that they have a satellite in the saddle, I think it's a better time to even talk about most of all these things. You can understand that even the current government efforts to the wrongs or wrong, the rights or wrong in Nigerian system is facing stiff resistance from the same people that have been subjugating everyone. For instance, the government came with the idea of town reform bill recently. It was surprising that the elements in the northern part of the country vehemently rejected it, to the point that they watered the bill down and removed every part of it that they felt it was against the North. I must say that the version that the presidency, or rather the president assented to, is already a watered down bill. It doesn't have the steam with which the presidency wanted to drive the process. Because before now, the intention of the government was obvious, at least to make sure that those places that generate the revenue in terms of production, in terms of consumption, in terms of derivative, should have a considerable revenue going to them. And that is the same thing we had during the time agriculture was the ministry of Nigerian economy. But surprisingly, the North resisted it. And with their number in the National Assembly, of course, they had their way. And if you begin to look at their number in the National Assembly, you begin to even question that their number. Because the number they have in the National Assembly was not fairly distributed. It was merely because they were privileged to be the president, or rather, yes, the president at the time, talking about when we were under the military rule. Because the Northerners in the military were changing leadership of Nigeria like people who were doing relay race, changing baton. So in all the state creations in Nigeria, it was done by the Northerners. That's why you see such level of lopsidedness in when it comes to states and local government in Nigeria. Because there's no justification behind the North having up to 19 states, as against 17 or so that is in the southern part of the country. There's no justification behind Kano having 44 states and local governments, and even the Jigawa that is carved out of Kano is currently having 27 local governments. So it implies that if you put together the number of local governments in Kano and Jigawa together, you are having 71 local governments. And these two states put together is not as populated as Lagos State. So what's the basis for this? And if you are to share government resources, which they normally call our common patrimony, on the basis of local governments, it means a place like Kano State will be getting more than a place like Delta, Bayelsa, Rivers, Cross River, Akwa Ibom, and other places, even Ondo, that has oil, even Abia State that has oil. So you begin to wonder what is the rationale. If not for 13% derivative that gives the oil producing states some comparative advantage, it means those states in the north would have been getting more than this revenue more than the states in the southern part of the country, based on the creation of states that is lopsided. So that is why, because currently a southerner is in the saddle. So what now happens when a northerner, perhaps a Fulani man, becomes the president again? Because I understand that the last administration that was headed by a Fulani man, there was so much effort to cover space for the Fulani men. Even at it's very obvious that it is the state governments that hold land in trust on behalf of the people. We saw the issue of Ruga that could not fly, because as it stands, no one, particularly in the southern part of the country, will want to cede land for Ruga that will eventually turn out to be Fulani will lay claim to it. Secondly, no one will want to, we equally saw the effort of the last administration to do water resourcing bill. A bill that seeks to take over all waterfront. And it was equally calculated that this was an attempt to take over the waterfronts so that they could allocate it to Fulani headers. All those gimmicks and rules, of course, Nigerians were following the government and it didn't see the light of the day. So now that we have a southerner in the saddle, is it not the better time to address most of all this imbalance? For instance, there is no justification behind southeastern part of the country having 6 states as against what you have in other geopolitical zones. The least you have is 6 states. So why should the Southeast be having 5 states? So for me, there is no justification behind Southeast having 5 states as against 6 that is in other geopolitical zones. So those imbalances must be addressed. If there is need to continue being together, we must come to a round table to have the conversation and agree that there is need to continue staying together. That is why the confab of 2014 would have been a very good thing. But if the current government is not interested in it, they should convene a similar one and let Nigerians come on board and discuss if there is need to continue being together. I must say that it is not a sin, it is not a crime to part ways, so long as it's being done within the ambits of the law. Self-determination in itself is not a crime, as long as it's done within the ambits of the law, without recourse of violence and wanton destruction of lives and property. Thank you very much. This is Imminent.